Welcome to Madlik. My name is Geoffrey Stern, and at Madlik we light a spark or shed some light on a Jewish text or tradition. We also host Madlik Disruptive Torah on Clubhouse every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And this week, along with Rabbi Adam Mintz and with the Yom Kippur liturgy fresh in our minds, we explore a disturbing, persistent, and infantile argument made for forgiveness. That God forgive us for His sake. The argument goes that God, as our Father and as our Creator, is ultimately responsible for our sins. So lie down on a couch and get ready for some therapy in this week's episode, Blame It on Dad. Welcome to Clubhouse, Madlik Disruptive Torah, every week at 4 o'clock Eastern, and we are recording this session and we will publish it on your favorite podcast platform as Madlik. So go ahead and give a listen, and if you do, please give us a star or two and a good review, and feel free to share it with your friends. This week's parsha is Ha'Azinu, and it is Moses' swan song to the Jewish people. And at times it can be pretty rough on the Jewish people. So it's in Deuteronomy 32. And there are three themes that I want to focus on today. But let's go ahead and read the verses in question. So it begins, "Do you thus requite the Lord, O dull and witless people? Is not He the Father who created you, fashioned you, and made you endure? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of ages past. Ask your father, he will inform you, your elders, and they will tell you." So it starts by referring to a concept we've seen before, which is God the Father and God the Creator of you. And then it goes on to say, and He said, "I will hide my countenance from them and see how they fare in the end, for they are a treacherous breed, children with no loyalty at all." So again, the focus is on children who just do not follow in the footsteps of their parent, their creator. And God introduces this concept of hester, panim, hiding His countenance from them, and says, see how they fare in the end. And the third theme is finally, God says, I would have destroyed you. I might have reduced them to naught, made their memory cease among men, but for the fear of the taunts of the foe, their enemies who might misjudge and say, our own hand has prevailed. None of this was wrought by the Lord. And this is another argument that we've seen before, where Moses on many occasions says to God, if you destroy this people, what will the goyim say? What will the non-Jews say? What will the Egyptians say? What will the world who has been watching this amazing project of taking a ragtag group of slaves, giving them freedom, bringing them into the desert, and building a new vision for social justice and society? What will happen if they are destroyed? What will everyone say about you and your project? So we have these three themes: God the Father, God the Creator, God saying, I've had enough, I will hide my face from you and see what becomes of you. And finally, I would have destroyed you if not for what that will do to my street cred, to what the world will say about you. And I want to pick up these themes because they are so primal to the story of the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, which we're ending. So it's only natural that we can go back to the beginning and look at the very first sin that was ever perpetrated. And of course, that is the sin of Eve when she ate of the apple. But when God comes and confronts Adam with this sin, what does Adam say? What is the response of man, of humanity, to being confronted with sin? Genesis 3:12, the man said, the woman you put at my side, she gave me of the tree and I ate. And as Rashi says, here he showed his ingratitude. kofer b'tovah. The idea that when man is caught sinning, the first thing he does is he blames his creator. He blames that being who gave him the break, who gave him that wife, to be at his side. It's precisely there that he says, if you had not given her to me, I would not have failed. And this is a recurring theme that we're going to pick up throughout the Bible. And it's clearly, to me, in any case, a very troubling one. In terms of blaming God, or defining God, I should say, you have even Abraham, if you remember, before Sodom, and he's saying to God, how can you destroy this people if you find 50, if you find 40, if you find 10? And he finally says, far be it from you, shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? It's again, he's not blaming God in this case, but he certainly is talking to God in a very assertive manner, saying that, listen, God, you have street creds. You are supposed to be this just being. You can't act unjustly. I mean, even that smacks a little bit of, let me say it, chutzpa.
There is a very fine line between chutzpah and the way that he speaks to God. I would agree 100%. You know, you kind of get the impression that God was much more human in the Torah, and therefore they could speak to God like this.
Yeah, and of course, we all know that the Torah speaks in the language of man, lo dibra Torah ela b'lashon b'nei Adam. So whether it's God being more human, or the text and our holy writ being written in a way that we can understand, it's irrelevant. But I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that the Bible gives us something that we can wrap our arms around. And in our perception of God, we perceive God to be just, so he has to act just. And if he doesn't, we can complain against him. And that's a good message. But later on, it's when the children of Israel are in the desert, and they start complaining, whether it's when the manna falls, or when there's not enough meat, or when the spies come back. And at one point, the Gemara in Avodah Zorah puts the words into Moses as saying, Moses said to the Jewish people, ingrates, children of ingrates. When the Holy One, blessed be he, said to the Jewish people, who would give that he had such a heart as this always? They should have said, you should. The point is that according to this piece of Talmud, every time that the Jews complain and they say, God, you took us out of Egypt, you brought us here, it's all your fault, or the reason it says ingrate, son of ingrates, is because he refers back to what Adam said to God. There's this overriding sense, not because God is the only one to complain, but maybe he's the biggest target, that the children of Israel actually act almost like children who are constantly coming back and saying, not that we failed, but that you failed us. You created us. You kind of like, you bought it, you own it type of thing. This ingrates, children of ingrates. Kafui tova b'nei kafui tova.
Yeah, you like that. That's a very strong image, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And it just seems like a strange way to kind of move forward. Nothing good can come out of it unless I'm missing something. It's kind of creating, we were talking before how the Torah is written in the language of man, but we still can control how we perceive things and how we represent things. And we're representing a situation where God, yes, sometimes can inspire us, but on the other hand becomes something that we can just batter, a battering.
I think the word is a target.
Absolutely, with a capital T.
Right?
Yeah. And that's why this recurring notion of what will the Egyptians say? What will the people of the world say? It almost is, it's kind of a hybrid argument. It's not only God, you put us in this situation, but because you put us in this situation, you now have to protect your flank, because people are going to say, you started this program, this experiment, you took this raggle-wrap of a people out of Egypt, you said that slaves could be free people, and we're failing. And so it not only is it your fault, but the humanity will cast blame on you as a failure at the most lowest level, but as someone who has given up and walked away from his creation.
I think that's an important idea, by the way. The idea that God will be a failure. I think there's something to that. God is very worried that people will think him a failure. Lama yomru mitzrayim lemor. Right? Why should the Egyptians say that God took us out to kill us in the desert? It's a very strong idea.
And I think, stepping back for a second, what it really reminds us of is that this whole project, the project of the Bible, is for all humanity. And so we've touched upon this theme in previous episodes, where God says, I tried with Adam, I tried with Noah, it failed. I really wanted this for all humanity. I didn't want to have a chosen people, but this became my plan B or C or D, my default strategy. But ultimately, it's important what happens in this program because the world is watching. And I think that's the most maybe favorable way that we can characterize kind of this argument of what will the rest of the world say. But certainly there's a level of, I find it a little pathetic, I have to say.
That's interesting. Pathetic. Tell everybody, why do you think it's pathetic?
Well, again, it's you were given great opportunities. The Jewish people, certainly, while they came from a very troubled background, they were given by this God amazing opportunities. They saw the Red Sea apart. They saw the revelation at Sinai. And given that, and given the opportunities that they've been given to talk about, to dream about going back to Egypt and to blame God for putting them in this situation, does smack of, as I can't say it better than Rashi, ingratitude.
Right. I mean, that's the word ingratitude. And that's the word of the parsha, is ingratitude. And what's interesting is, let's just go back to the parsha, the way you introduced it for a minute. It's interesting that everything's going to work out okay. That Ha'Azinu ends on a high note. You know, that you're going to find God and that everything's going to end up working out okay. We know that that's not always the case.
Yep.
Things don't always end up okay. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, here's a case where the Jews are being put on the spot, putting on trial, and being castigated, and they come back and they say, well, it's all your fault. You put us in this situation. You're talking about those situations where no one's castigating them, but life is tough. And again, they go back and they blame their parents, so to speak. I want to pick up on that theme of the father, because in Numbers, so we're not talking midrash here, we're not talking commentary, we're talking the book of Bamidbar Numbers. Moshe is in one of these situations that he's in multiple times where God says, let's just cut the cord. I will destroy this people and I'll begin afresh with you. And Moses turns back in Numbers 11, verse 12. He said, did I conceive all this people? Did I bear them that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries an infant to the land that you have promised on oath to their fathers? you can't but take away from this that Moses is almost again saying to God, I'm not their father. You're their father. You cannot put on me this blame and this responsibility of carrying them. But again, it comes back down to, if I were the father, or in this case, God, you are the father, you gave birth to them, you created this project, you need to fulfill your promise, even if they let you down. So the two themes are kind of inextricably connected.
You know, I saw an amazing story before Yom Kippur. The story is of a man who sits down before Yom Kippur, and he takes out his book, and the book has a list of all his sins. I did this wrong and I did this wrong. And then he opens another book, and the other book has a list of all the things God did wrong. You killed this person died of cancer, and there was a flood, and there was a hurricane, and all these things. And the man looks up to heaven, he says, God, I'll make you a deal. If you forgive me, I'll forgive you.
Well, that sounds like one of these wonderful Hasidic stories where really...
Which, of course, it is.
Yeah.
But it's kind of related to your point.
It is, and I would go, one step further. Some of the Hasidim, especially the Breslovers, would go out into the woods and they would pray to God and call Tate, Tate, my dad, my dad. They focused on the real parent-child relationship. And I assume that has good aspects of it. And it also has some negative aspects too.
Right, for sure. I mean, it's just, like all these Hasidic stories, it's just to kind of give you an impression. But it's a strong impression, I think.
I agree. I was thinking about this during all the liturgy and prayers of Yom Kippur, and I was really struck by the fact that this argument that we have kind of uncovered, the one of slight ingratitude, slight chutzpa, where the sinner turns around and says to the accuser, in this case God, hey buddy, you put me in this spot. It's actually very well presented in the liturgy. So the most famous prayer is Avinu Malkeinu. And Barbara Streisand does a great job of singing it. We all love it. It's got many stanzas. But in the Talmud, an amazing story about a situation where there was a drought, and a rabbi was unsuccessful. Rabbi Eliezer was unsuccessful in getting the rain to come. And Rabbi Akiva, one of our buddies and friends, went ahead and he invented this prayer. And he said, Avinu Malkeinu lemancha rachem aleinu, which means, God our Father, for your sake, have mercy upon us. And of course, you could say that I'm kind of picking words here, but there is no question that later, when they added to these verses, they said, if not for us, then for your sake. But it's clear from the perspective that he gave it, number one, calling God Father, and emphasizing that fatherly relationship. And then saying, again, it's because, for your sake, do it. Does he mean for your sake because you gave birth to us? Is it because for your sake, because of what others will speak? Well, who knows? This question of in the Avinu Malkeinu, which is such a significant part of our prayers. Rabbi Akiva introduces both the Avinu part, that God is our Father, but also this little insight that we've been working on, which is because you're our Father, it's lemancha. Do it for your sake. And I think that that's very key to the arguments. I mean, the other place where it comes up is the most beautiful poem and prayer that we have. It's like play in the hands of the potter. And there too, it seems like just a beautiful little story based on verses in Jeremiah and other of the prophets, We say, like clay in the hands of the potter, if he wills, he can expand it. If he wills, he can contract it. So too are we in your hand, preserver of kindness. Heed the covenant and not the accuser. Like stone in the hand of the mason. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem. But is it not doing the same thing? Is it not basically saying, hey, God, we're the golem and you fashioned us. We are the statue. We are the rudder. We are the gem. Call us what you want. But at the end of the day, you made us. You made a covenant with us. You need to protect us against the accuser. Is it not the same argument?
The answer is it does sound like the same argument, doesn't it? You think it's chutzpah. What you're saying, Geoffrey, is it's chutzpah.
Well, I am, and I always thought it, but then I was reading Jonathan Sacks's Machzor, and he actually quotes it and brings up Shemot Rabbah, which is a midrash, where it says, what is the meaning of we are the clay, you are the potter? And it says, Israel said, Master of the universe, you have caused it to be written about us, like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand. Israel, therefore do not leave us even though we sin and provoke you, for we are merely the clay and you are the potter. Consider if a potter makes a jar and leaves a pebble in it. When it comes out of the furnace, it will leak from the hole left by the pebble and lose the liquid poured into it. Who caused the jar to leak and lose its liquid? The potter who left the pebble in the jar as it was being made. This is how Israel pleaded before God. Master of the universe, you created us with an evil inclination from our youth. As it says, for the inclination of man's heart is evil from his youth. And it is that has caused us to sin, since you have not removed from us the inclination that instigates us to sin. And Rabbi Sachs points out that the whole argument is based on a play on words. We talk about Ata Yotzreinu, that you created us, and we are Chomer Biyad HaYotzer. We are material in the hand of the Yotzer, and there's the Yetzer Hara. So it makes the case that all of our deficiencies are basically can be blamed on our Yotzer, on that who created us. So it's not only what I hear, I think it's the rabbis heard this as well.
I think, yeah, sorry, that's very, very good. That's a nice idea. Where does Rabbi Sachs say that?
Well, he says it in his introduction to the Yom Kippur Machzor. He has a whole paragraph on clay in the hands of the potter. And so it's in the notes for this session, but he quotes Shemot Rabbah, and of course it's the rabbis who make this case, and he goes even further to say that maybe, and this is something that a theme that I have not brought up, is that maybe we don't need to attribute this to a parental relationship, rebelling against one's parents or blaming every deficiency on one's parents. Maybe it's just doggone chutzpah. And he says maybe the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that when it comes to prayer, you need some chutzpah. So it's complicated. It's complicated like parent-children relationships. And we probably can't get away from it, but certainly to identify this issue of constantly blaming God for our deficiencies or blaming our parents or for our deficiencies is something that, has its place, but also can be played out a little bit, I think.
I think that's really nice. I mean, I think that's a really beautiful idea. When we missed Rabbi Sachs, this is just about a year since his passing, and we missed Rabbi Sachs, and I think you see the amazing insight he has to this is really beautiful.
Well, absolutely. So the third theme that I brought up was this question of God hiding his face. And I just wonder, I don't want to put any of our listeners on the spot, but if anyone is a psychologist or can talk about parent-children relationships, that would be insightful. The idea that what do you do with a child who constantly blames you for all of their deficiencies? We've gone through half an hour where the Jewish people say, hey, God, you took us out of Egypt. You put us into this situation. We're just a bunch of raggle-taggle slaves. We have no idea what freedom and responsibility is. It's all you. You're to blame. We all said yesterday, we're clay in the hands of the potter. God, you made us. You must have left a marble in the dough because we didn't turn out so well. It's your fault. And I think what I would love to give as a suggested answer is at a certain point, God says, hester panim, I will hide my face. The best thing that I can do is to wean you of that relationship, is to pull away. And I think that's the third element here, that God says to the Jewish people in the song of Ha'Azinu. He says, you blame me for everything. You forget that I'm your parent in a good way. So I will hide my countenance from them and see how they fare in the end. And I think this question of seeing how they fare in the end is normally taken as part of a punishment, like we'll see what happens to you now. You know, this is what you want. You want that new car, or you want that to do it your way. You don't want to listen to me. Well, let's see how that works out. But on the other hand, it might be a blessing. And God might be saying, listen, I have no choice. I have to pull back. You need to learn on your own, to stand on your own 2 feet, to stop casting blame going backwards to those who have empowered you. And I'll see how it turns out. And maybe God is saying, hopefully, with a sense of hope, we'll see how it turns out.
I think that's beautiful.
I mean, I think that the question of how Sukkot and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah all come together is maybe part of this answer, where we're moving out of our house. God is kicking us out. And we go into the sukkah and we only have ourselves and maybe a few pieces of branch or straw protecting us. The word that the Psalms talks about is the same word as God uses when he hides his face. It says that you shall be, and this is from the Psalm that we read all through the high holidays and into Sukkot. And that is, and he will shelter me in his sukkah on an evil day. We create our own shelter. We create our own life. We have to stand on our own 2 feet. We are surrounded by the beauty of nature and the crops that we have grown. And maybe that's part of the answer, but that certainly is part of the answer for those of us who maybe it doesn't resonate in terms of the liturgy and the services that we do in the synagogue, where we try the blame game. And maybe after Ne'ilah, we're ready to step outside and to welcome our new selves with a smile and the simcha that you talked about, Rabbi, a few weeks ago.
I think that's beautiful, and I just want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and enjoy and a Chag Sameach, and look forward to seeing everybody next week. Maybe next week, Geoffrey, since it's Shabbat Chol HaMoed and we read the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, we can choose something from Ecclesiastes.
That's a great idea. Okay, let's think about that.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, and for those of you, including Stav and Yochanan and anyone else who wants to continue the conversation, welcome to the after party. Stav, how are you, my friend?
All good, Geoffrey. I'm live from California, from Los Angeles traffic. And you just brought up, I came in a little late, but you just brought up something in me, because I was thinking during this Yom Kippur, the first time I fasted wholeheartedly in a while, and I was thinking a lot about forgiveness. And, you know, I realized how most people, or I usually think about asking forgiveness on Yom Kippur, but this time I was really into also the idea of giving forgiveness. And, when you talked about blaming God for making us imperfect or with the Yetzer Hara and all that, I was thinking is also part of the idea also to forgive God in any way for that. And just came up in me, and I wonder your thoughts.
I definitely think that's part of it. I mean, there's another prayer that says at the end of it, Aval anachnu va'avotenu chatanu, that we and our parents have sinned. And I always was curious, why does it say we and our parents have sinned? Again, is it part of this this whole strategy of saying, hey, it's not just me, it's my parents also? Or are we talking about that God in heaven? The avotenu is, hey God, we're both not blameless here. You, if we're talking as a nation, you freed us, you put us in the desert. We didn't have a clue about freedom and responsibility. If it's talking about us as individuals, it's a real heavy load that we're asked to do as we kind of journey and navigate through this world. And while it's probably not healthy to totally blame God, I do think that the relationship is such, whether it's because Avinu Malkeinu, that he's both our king and our parent, but he's also a member of a covenant, and a covenant is two ways. So I think that's a wonderful insight. And I do think that at the end of the day, I am so into Sukkot right now. It's amazing how you can switch gears. But I'm ready to move out of the house. I'm like a little kid who's moving out of the house for the first time, and I look at my father both in life and in heaven, and I just smile and I say, you know what, bygones are bygones. I'm out now. I'm going to make my own way. You're going to be a part of it. But I think that's part of. I think you got to go through the whole process. But I do think that forgiving God is as dastardly as it sounds. It's probably part of the process as well.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Thank you, Stav. Okay, well, unless there's anybody else who has any suggestions or questions, I am going to wish everybody a wonderful year, a Shabbat Shalom, and get out there, build a sukkah or find a tree to sit underneath their shade and just enjoy these last waning days of the fall and be thankful for the 2 feet that you can stand on and the air you can breathe. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and maybe that's the ultimate reason why Sukkot is the final day of forgiveness and rejuvenation that we're given. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all for joining.